Peacemaker Season 2 felt like it was so different than Season 1 in all of the most interesting ways possible. We had double vigilantes moving like a ghost-faced duo, John Cena delivering some of the most insane acting moments of his career, Earth X, Bird Blindness, and Sasha Bordeaux. I think at first, with the Rick Flag Sr., hardcore alpha male storylines, and general splitting up of the team, Peacemaker Season 2 had a ways to go from the first episode. And though I do think there are some minor flaws riddled throughout the entire series, the writing for Peacemaker as a character feels so central and emotionally intelligent and purposeful that I really do think this is one of the better recent superhero projects. At the core of all of this for me is just John Cena as Peacemaker. I think after this season especially, he is cemented on my personal favorite castings for a comic book character in that I genuinely cannot see anyone else in this role. I think his dynamic with Rick Flag Sr., who in all technicality is the overarching villain of this season, is absolutely perfect. This difference in building out the government and political side of the DC universe put Rick Flag in a really interesting spot, and I have heard that theory on Twitter about how Rick Flag Jr. would have been what Rick Flag Sr. is, but he killed him off in the Suicide Squad, not knowing that Peacemaker would be such an essential character in the exploration of the government in the new DCU. And though I think that may be true, I think Rick Flag Sr. works to the plot's best interest, especially when you see Rick Flag Jr. in the alternate dimension. But back to this Peacemaker versus Rick Flag Sr. thing, I think it just works really well, and though there's other antagonistic aspects, Keith from the other dimension, I think all of that works great, but at its core, you know that there is this Peacemaker versus Arcus storyline, and that also allows for phenomenal side characters, which, in my opinion, is the absolute strength of Peacemaker and the DC universe thus far. I think a lot of times what makes a show great is taking one central theme and spreading it throughout a bunch of different side characters, but James Gunn opts to take a very different route here. He gives every single character a different problem. The whole spectrum of emotion, you don't just get from one character. I mean, you do get it from Peacemaker, but you also get it through every single possible side character. This is what James Gunn has always been great at. You just have so many great and rootable or hateable characters, like Economos, the Bird Blindness guy, Sasha Bordeaux, hardcore, vigilante. The list goes on and on and on, but my favorite example is Adebayo. I think she has the perfect balance of personal problems with her own, like, vigilante type of company, and then also trying to help and root for Peacemaker and trying to explore all of the in-between with the government stuff. Langston and Bordeaux are the new Argus side characters, and I absolutely love them in this season. I mean, yes, to an extent, them and Economos are just used for humor at times, but I think it works, and I think they have just enough of a personal vendetta or interesting storyline connecting themselves to Argus and Peacemaker that I don't really care that they're just on screen and off screen. I just like it when they have time to shine. I'll circle back to Peacemaker in a second here because there is a lot of thematic stuff with the multiverse jumping that I want to talk about, but I think episode 7 proves why the side character compliment and the general compliments of just Peacemaker being such a well-written character, why that works in the show so much. Episode 7 is primarily set in the other universe that Peacemaker is visiting. It has all of this emotional and thematic turmoil, and all of this stuff of the season is peaking. This might as well have been the final episode. I know there's no like floating flying cow monster thing like there was in the finale of last season, but in my opinion it just goes to show how important Peacemaker as a human being is in this season compared to last season. But we have that, and then we also have an Argus storyline with Sasha Bordeaux, Rick Flag Sr., a cameo from a small character in Superman, and the episode ends with Peacemaker getting arrested. I think this is overall a formula that changes so much of the way the season was going, and I think it would have been the perfect finale. Not saying the finale is bad, I just think it would have been the perfect ending. And though episode 7 is phenomenal, I do have one general problem with the show as a whole, and that is these episodes are way too short. They kind of feel like comedy specials in the worst way possible. Like this and The Office have same length episodes. That's not a good thing. No diss to The Office, one of my favorite shows of all time, but this is just attempting something so much more grand. I don't know if that was the right comparison. With Peacemaker season 2, every single week I look forward to sitting down and watching a new episode on my TV, but then I'm kind of like, damn, it was only 30 minutes. That's all we got. I think it's because recently I've been watching a lot of shows all at once, which isn't my preferred way. I just got screeners for some of my most anticipated shows of the year, like Daredevil or Andor. The Bear was also a binge model this year. I don't know. I really love this show, but I can't lie when I say every single week I do find myself just wanting more rather than not just like story progression, because they progress the story a lot in 30 minutes. I just want more content. I want more time with these characters. There's so many moments, especially in episode 7, but also earlier in the season where there's stuff with the Justice Gang. All of that kind of stuff could be expanded upon a lot more and just made really fun and exciting. I don't think many emotional moments are undermined because of this runtime decision, but I do find that a lot of people agree with me when saying they just want more of Peacemaker and his friends. And the final thing I want to talk about before getting into the future of the DCU is the way that John Cena and Peacemaker have evolved on a physical performance and character level. Peacemaker says, it's not your
world that's wrong or mine, it's me. Fuck.
And I think in season 1, we get a good enough evolution of Peacemaker's character of standing up to his dad by episode 6, episode 7. And then in episode 8, we have this overarching big villain creature thing going on. In this season, that's not necessarily the case. And I really, really like that. It seems that James Gunn is aiming for something a little more personal when, in my opinion, he really could have gone for some insane big creature setup from the very beginning. And obviously in the finale, we get to that spot, but he could have really been using this as just a let's set up the future of the DC universe. But this instead feels like such a great personal character study on Peacemaker, on ego, on what's wrong and right about your past and how you can or cannot redeem yourself, his relationship with Hardcore, his relationship with Rick Flag Sr., and all of his friends is such a great example of how humans change and how you aren't someone you used to be. And I think James Gunn is just obviously the perfect man at writing redeemable characters, but this is just another level in my opinion. I personally would say that Peacemaker is my favorite character that James Gunn has ever written. I do think Superman is a phenomenal adaptation of the character, but we've had different iterations. It feels like you can pick and choose and create your perfect Superman. This is the only Peacemaker that we've ever gotten, and it feels like the most real and based character James Gunn has ever made. And even though the finale seems to be arguably the most controversial episode of the entire series thus far, I do think we'll see a lot more of Peacemaker just because of how adjacently important Rick Flag Sr. seems to be to the future of the DC universe. As for the future of the DC universe, obviously the main thing in the entire season of this show was the portals to literal different universes, which was first explored with Rifts and Superman. And they finally find a habitable planet, which to me felt like the core of this episode. And now Rick Flag is really just so set on hating metahumans. I don't really think that the portal prison is going to be something that goes necessarily hand in hand with Man of Tomorrow, as in like a Brainiac comes from a different dimension. But I think it's just going to be something that's going on in the politics of the world that proposes Superman to actually have to go fight that or battle that as a metahuman and as the most popular metahuman.
From the comics, there is a comic called Salvation that is a limited series. Amanda Waller and Rick Flag. There's all these metahumans that keep getting into. We don't care what happens to them. This isn't about justice. Well, that's where we're sort of beginning our part of our larger story in the DC. You here in this moment.
At the end of the day, Peacemaker Season 2 isn't perfect, and most of its flaws come from its overall character and story writing, but I think Peacemaker as a character is so well executed to the point where I genuinely care for all of the governmental and political ideas of the DC universe moving forward, and that seems to be the job of this series. Really, really excited to see what James Gunn does next in Man of Tomorrow and how Project Salvation and all of the other characters in Peacemaker come into play there. Let me know what you thought of Peacemaker Season 2 in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.